In the icy void, the Zorrak Dominion's invincible fleet descended on Nova Polaris, a fragile human outpost. Commander Krelthar sneered at their scrap metal ship Suntal. The humans struck back with savage ingenuity, turning the tide. What secrets fueled their defiance? Dive into this epic tale of survival and alliance. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more thrilling stories. Your support inspires us. The cold, metallic walls of the Zorrak flagship Vornix raft shimmered as it cut through the void. A massive warship, black and sleek, it was a symbol of the Zorrak Dominion's power, unquestioned, unstoppable. Commander Krelthar stood at the helm, 6 tendrils twitching in agitation as he gazed at the holographic display. Nova Polaris, a speck of humanity's colonial ambition on the edge of Zorrak space, flashed before him. Is this it? Krelthar's voice was a low growl, his 6 eyes narrowing in disbelief. The intelligence reports indicated a simple mining outpost, one that had no chance against the might of the Zorrak war machine. General Vornix, his scales flickering with unease, stepped forward, clearing his throat. Commander, we've received troubling reports. Their fleet, if you can call it that, isn't as primitive as we thought. The human ships have strange designs. They appear to be cobbled together from old ships and scrap metal. Krelthar's laughter echoed through the command deck, harsh and mocking. Scrap. They cannot possibly mount a challenge. Our fleet has 250 warships, 1,000 fighter craft, and 100,000 elite soldiers. They are insects, no match for us. He waved a dismissive hand, silencing the general. Proceed with the attack. We will show them their place in the galaxy. As Krelthar issued his orders, the fleet mobilized 25 warships, including the flagship Vornix Wrath, and 300 fighters slipped from hyperspace. The enormous armada tearing toward Nova Polaris. They believed this would be a simple mission, a mere act of conquest. The humans would break under the weight of Zorrak might, but they would not. In the depths of the colony, a hum stirred to life. Hidden deep within Nova Polaris' system were 40 CIVILIZED ships, each one a patchwork of salvage tech, ancient engines, and weaponry far from polished but deadly in their own right. These ships, once miners, colonists, and engineers, had been waiting for this moment. They had been underestimated for far too long, and now they would fight back. The vacuum of space above Nova Polaris was shattered by the soundless roar of the Zorrak fleet as it descended upon the human colony. Their massive warships, gleaming black behemoths, spread across the void like vultures. Behind them, 300 Zorrak fighter craft flanked in tight formation, preparing to launch their first wave of assault. Commander Krelthar watched with an almost cruel satisfaction as his forces neared their target. The humans, weak, disorganized, would break easily. Activate the bombardment sequence, Krelthar ordered, his voice as cold as the space around him. The Zorrak fleet's long-range cannons roared to life, sending torrents of plasma missiles toward Nova Polaris. Explosions rippled across the surface of the planet, filling the stores with violent light. But as the Zorrak warships closed in, the unexpected happened. A streak of shadow darted through the darkness, impossibly fast, slamming into the first of the Zorrak fighter craft. A crackle of bright, chaotic energy erupted as the human ship, a battered, modified mining vessel, tore through the Zorrak ranks, its hull patched together from discarded wreckage. A series of laser blasts pierced the void, ripping apart fighter after fighter in rapid succession. A fighter's engines burst in a fiery explosion as it collided with a nearby Zorrak destroyer. What are these ships? General Vornix's voice trembled, an edge of fear creeping into his usually stoic demeanor. Humans, Krelthar spat, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. This is impossible. They've got no organized fleet, just scavengers. Yet the reality was far worse. The humans, despite their ragtag appearance, moved with uncanny precision. Their ships, cloaked in shadows, seemed to appear out of nowhere, striking like lightning. Within minutes, the Zorrak fleet had lost 25 fighters, and several of their warships had been torn apart by unpredictable, savage tactics. Zorrak officers scrambled to regroup, but the humans kept hitting them from unexpected angles, always staying one step ahead. Then, the final blow came. A massive, modified Civilian freighter, stripped of its cargo, but heavily armed, launched a salvo of hastily engineered missiles, impacting the Vornik's Wrath. The flagship's shields flickered before collapsing under the assault, and a wave of panic spread through the Zorrak command. Retreat, Krelthar barked, finally understanding the true scale of their underestimation. The Zorrak forces, in full disarray, turned and fled, leaving behind the twisted wreckage of their once proud fleet. The humans had done the impossible. They had won. The Zorrak flagship Vornik's Wrath hung in the silent void, battered and smoking. Commander Krelthar stood rigid at the center of the war room, his 6 tendrils twitching in anxious rhythm. The holographic map before him pulsed with ominous data. Human ships, scattered and disorganized, had just dismantled over 25 of his fleet's fighters and obliterated 5 of his warships. In a matter of minutes, the numbers didn't add up. This was no fluke. This was a catastrophe. How did this happen? Krelthar growled, his voice low with fury. He turned to General Vornik, who was struggling to maintain composure. Explain it. Vornik's normally confident scales were dull and gray, his voice shaky. The human vessels, while rudimentary, have been modified to a degree I've never seen. Their speed, it's unlike anything we've encountered. They don't follow standard battle tactics. They seem chaotic, unpredictable. Our sensor arrays couldn't track them. Krelthar slammed a fist into the console, sending sparks flying. Unacceptable. These are humans, not gods. We outnumber them 10 to 1. Vornik shook his head. It's not just their numbers, Commander. They've turned their primitive tech into weapons of mass destruction. Mining lasers have been refitted into hull-piercing beams. Drones, originally used for reconnaissance, are now used to paralyze our soldiers mid-charge. It's as if they've adapted in real time. Krelthar's rage burned, but beneath it lays something more profound, fear. He realized the humans were not the weak, helpless creatures he had assumed. They were relentless, ingenious, and willing to sacrifice everything. The worst part, they were winning. Prepare for the retreat, Krelthar ordered, his voice grim. This battle is lost, but the war is just beginning. The air inside Earth's broadcasting station was thick with tension as General Zorrak Kingston stood before the camera. The shattered remnants of their war-torn cities flickered behind her, a backdrop of rubble and smoke, a grim reminder of humanity's resilience. She had been in countless battles, but this moment was different. This wasn't just about survival. This was a message to the galaxy. Zorrak Dominion, Zara began, her voice cutting through the static of a million broadcasts. You've underestimated us for the last time. We are not weak. We are not helpless. And we will not be cowed. The screen behind her flashed with images from Earth's history, brutal wars, devastating natural disasters, and humanity's constant fight for survival. The scars of 1,000 battles played out like a storybook of human ingenuity, showing the relentless drive of a species that had clawed its way from the jungles of Earth to the stars. Zorrak Kingston sternly, you came to us thinking we were easy prey. Your fleet, 250 warships and 1,000 fighters, was supposed to wipe us out. Instead, you've lost 25 warships and 40,000 elite soldiers in a matter of hours. Our scrap ships, refitted mining vessels, crewed drones, tore through your fleet with surgical precision. We've been preparing for this. The broadcast shifted to show the human scrappy ships, mining vessels converted into war machines. Their engines, once used for drilling, now powered weapons capable of tearing through the hulls of Zorrak warships. The images of human fighters darting through space, their maneuverability unmatched, left no question of their strength. Zorrak Kingston coldly, you wanted to conquer us. You wanted to enslave us. We are not your prey. You've been warned. Cease your aggression, or we unleash the beasts we've chained within us. With that, the transmission cut, leaving the Zorrak Dominion with nothing but the deafening silence of space. and the looming threat of humanity's fury. The silence of the Zorrak Supreme Assembly was oppressive as Commander Krelthar stormed into the chamber. The once proud Zorrak warlord, always confident, now felt the weight of his failure pressing down like a collapsing star. In front of him, the glowing hologram of Earth's broadcast flickered. The audacity of the human's message stung, and Krelthar, for the first time in years, felt a pang of doubt. The supreme leader of the Zorrak Dominion, an ancient figure with scales that shimmered like dark gemstones, glanced at Krelthar with cold, calculating eyes. The humans, they have embarrassed us. Krelthar's voice was hoarse, barely containing the fury that boiled beneath his surface. They wiped out 25 of our warships and 40,000 of our finest soldiers. They destroyed our best fighter fleet. They weren't supposed to fight like this. They were supposed to cower. General Vorna, standing beside Krelthar, spoke cautiously. Commander, their technology, it's not advanced by our standards. Their ships are patched together from scrap, their weapons jury-rigged. But there is something chaotic, unpredictable about them. They've adapted, evolving faster than we can respond. Lysra, a shrewd Zorrak analyst with glowing orange eyes, stepped forward, her voice cold and measured. You're not understanding. This isn't just a matter of technology or numbers. This is a species that thrives on pressure. Under siege, they innovate. They outthink. They survive. Their strength isn't in their ships. It's in their resolve. If we push them further, they'll burn away everything that makes them civilized. Krelthar's thoughts raced. The Zork had always relied on overwhelming force, but humanity had something else. An unpredictability that turned the tide of the battle. The realization hit him like a blow to the chest. We can't fight them with brute force alone. Then we must negotiate, Lysra suggested, her voice unyielding. Or we'll face extinction. The cold expanse of space stretched endlessly outside the windows of the human warship Dawn Spear. Its sleek design, though far less intimidating than the Zork's monumental ships, radiated the quiet power of human ingenuity. It was a ship born from the necessity of survival, refined, adaptive, and ruthlessly efficient. Commander Krelthar and Analyst Lysra, standing at the edge of the observation deck, observed it with a mixture of disdain and cautious curiosity. To them, it was a reminder that humanity, though primitive in appearance, had risen far beyond what they had expected. Krelthar's tendrils twitched in impatience. He had never been a fan of diplomacy, but after their humiliating defeat, it was clear that no amount of firepower alone would bring the humans to heel. The Dawn Spear's doors opened with a soft hiss, and Dr. Lena Voss walked in. Her figure was lithe, her eyes sharp with the intelligence of 1,000 scientists and warriors combined. Once an astrogeologist, now humanity's envoy, she exuded a calm confidence. Her black military suit was adorned with the insignia of the United Terran Coalition, a symbol of humanity's defiance, their unity in the face of annihilation. You've come, Krelthar said, his voice tinged with grudging respect. To what end? Doctor. Voss didn't flinch. She studied him with a calculating gaze before answering. I'm here to offer you a choice. Continue your path of destruction, and you will never leave this sector alive. But if you help us fight a greater threat, we may survive together. The Kryon Collective is coming. Lysra's eyes flickered with disbelief. The Kryon? They are nothing but myth. Voss smirked. Not anymore. They are a crystalline swarm, hundreds of kilometers wide, bent on wiping out all organic life they encounter. Their technology is beyond anything you've ever seen. It makes our weapons look like children's toys. She moved forward, pressing a button on the console. Holographic images of the Kryon appeared, shimmering, terrifying behemoths of crystalline structures. Their surfaces shifting with a malice that sent chills through the Zork. We've seen them firsthand, Doctor. Voss continued. If you don't help us, we won't survive this. And neither will you? Krelthar and Lysra exchanged a tense glance. It was impossible to ignore the gravity of the situation. We are not your allies, human, Krelthar said. But even his pride couldn't ignore the undeniable truth. Earth's fight was now their fight. What do you propose? An alliance? Your ships? Or technology? Together, we might stand a chance. The room grew silent, the weight of the moment settling on them. The Zorrak had always ruled by fear, but for the first time in centuries, they were forced to consider something new. Cooperation with the very species they had so thoroughly underestimated. The construction of the stellar bastion was a sight to behold. A massive station floating in the cold depths of space. A combination of human innovation and Zorrak might. The Zorrak workers, their massive forms encased in armored exoskeletons, welded vast metal plates together, while human engineers, nimble and quick, maneuvered through the station's skeletal frame, repurposing old technology into something far more lethal. For the first time, two species, once enemies, were united by a single purpose: survival. Commander Krelthar stood on the observation deck, watching as the station's framework began to take shape. The cold, distant stars stretched out before him, but his thoughts were focused on the delicate situation unfolding inside the station's heart. Zorrak warships, once a symbol of unrivaled power, now docked alongside human-built cruisers, some no larger than transport ships, yet all brimming with untapped potential. Together, they formed a defensive line against an enemy far more dangerous than either species had anticipated. Krelthar, I still don't understand it, human. Why do you fight like this? You have no fleet, no resources, yet you can destroy fleets 1,000 times your size. Dr. Voss, now standing beside him, watching the workers below. We fight because we've been pushed to the edge for too long. We've learned to innovate, to adapt. When there's nothing left to lose, you find new ways to win. Look at these ships, mining vessels turned into war machines. You can't understand it because you've never had to. You've always dominated. The Zorrak commander's eyes narrowed. You call it innovation. I call it madness. But I'm starting to see the strength in it. On the far side of the station, human engineers were wiring together makeshift energy shields, converting abandoned mining drones into sentries that could withstand Zorrak fire. Overhead, the Zorrak ships, stripped of their armament, were being refitted by humans into something entirely new. A fusion of raw Zorrak power and human adaptability. The Zorrak's mighty engines were being repurposed into engines, capable of delivering devastating new weapons, even making use of asteroids as projectiles. As they continued to work, Krelthar watched, slowly beginning to understand. The humans were not just a species to be feared. They were a species that could make even their greatest foes stronger. And as much as it gnawed at him, he knew he would have to rely on them if they were to survive the coming war. Krelthar, this alliance will work, but mark my words, human, I will not forget that we are allies only because of necessity. Dr. Voss with a hint of a smile, and I will remember, Krelthar. That's why it will work. The stellar bastion buzzed with activity as the joined human Zorrak fleet prepared for its first full-scale training exercise. The once divided crews now mingled on the massive station, exchanging war stories, learning tactics from one another, and testing the limits of their combined technology. There was a palpable tension in the air. Zorrak soldiers, hardened by centuries of war, and human engineers, driven by necessity and invention. Neither species trusted the other fully, but they were learning to work together. Krelthar watched the training from the command center, his eyes scanning the vast fleet spread out before him. 30 human ships, each a hodgepodge of salvaged mining vessels and repurposed freighters, were docked next to 20 Zorrak warships, now partially stripped for upgrades. The human ships were lighter, faster, their hulls designed for agility rather than raw firepower. The Zorrak vessels, once behemoths of destruction, were being retrofitted with human-made energy shields, their weapons augmented with human ingenuity. Together, they made a force unlike any the galaxy had seen before. You'll have to teach them how to fight dirty, Doctor, Voss said, walking up behind Krelthar. Her voice was calm, but there was a fire in her eyes. The Zorrak follow rigid protocols. They need to learn to break the rules. Krelthar turned to her, his expression unreadable. They will learn, and when they do, it will be a force the galaxy has never seen. At that moment, the ships launched into simulated battle. Human vessels darting across the sky like starlings in a storm, while Zorrak ships, newly equipped with human technologies, powered up their weapons. They were clumsy at first, Zorrak soldiers uncertain, human pilots too eager. But as the exercise progressed, the lines between them began to blur. Human craft executed evasive maneuvers at 15 gigaseconds, while Zorg warships fired with deadly precision, cutting down asteroid-sized targets with ease. The combination of raw Zorg power and human ingenuity had created a terrifying new breed of warrior. Krelthar could see it now. This wasn't just a partnership. It was the beginning of something unstoppable. The quiet hum of the stellar bastion's engines was interrupted by a sharp, shrill alarm that echoed through the entire station. Every officer, soldier, and engineer on board froze. The once bustling corridors now fell into an eerie stillness, broken only by the pounding of boots and the rapid clicking of communication terminals. Doctor, Voss rushed to the observation deck, where Krelthar stood already, his 6 tendrils stiff with tension as he gazed out into the vastness of space. Before them, an ominous wave of light flickered in the distance, a shimmering cloud that seemed to pulse, growing larger by the second. Voss spoke first, her voice uncharacteristically tight with fear. That's them. The Kryon Collective. They're real, and they're coming. Krelthar's eyes narrowed as the numbers started to fill the data streams on the console. The Kryon Collective wasn't just a threat, they were an extinction event. The swarm was over 150 kilometers wide, made up of hundreds of thousands of individual crystalline ships, each capable of tearing through planetary defenses with ease. Their technology was beyond even Zork capabilities, a relentless, self-replicating force that wiped out organic life with terrifying efficiency. They didn't conquer, they purged. Krelthar coldly. How much time do we have? Doctor. Voss pressed a button, zooming in on the approaching swarm. A little over 2 hours before they reach our system. We'll be at the mercy of their attack drones before we can even react. The Zork commander clenched his fists. We've barely finished our training exercises. The fleet's not ready. Neither is ours, human. Voss turned to him, her eyes sharp. We don't have the luxury of time. Krelthar, it's all or nothing. I don't care if your Zork fleet is ready or not. We fight now. We fight together. A tense silence followed, the realization settling in. The Zork had always thrived on overwhelming force, but this enemy didn't care about numbers. The humans had proven their ingenuity in battle, but now, that would be tested against a foe unlike any they had ever faced. We may have one chance, Krelthar muttered, and we're going to take it. The calm of the stellar bastion shattered as the Kryon Collective descended on the system. The crystalline swarm, numbering over 300,000 individual ships, glittered like stars in the distance. Each ship was a marvel of alien engineering, smooth, faceted, and cold, their surfaces shifting with impossible precision. The swarm's approach was like a storm, silent yet full of destructive intent. Krelthar stood in the heart of the command center, his 6 eyes scanning the data screens as the incoming enemy fleet grew closer. The joint human-Zork fleet, still far from perfected, was hastily assembled and barely prepared for what was coming. It was all or nothing. Are we ready? Krelthar's voice was thick with urgency. Doctor. Voss stood beside him, tapping away at a console. Ready enough. The human fleet is in position. We've adapted the Zork weapons to human standards, astounding firepower. But it will take precision to make it count. She paused, her fingers hovering over a key. We'll need to outsmart them. The Kryon swarm doesn't think like us. They move as one, a perfect collective consciousness. They'll predict every move we make unless we give them something they can't calculate. Krelthar nodded. Unpredictability. Just like you humans. And you're sure it will work? Voss didn't flinch. We've got no choice but to make it work. The human ships, agile and deceptively unremarkable, formed a tight formation, darting out to engage the Kryon swarm with rapid maneuvers. every movement designed to confuse and mislead. The Zorrak warships followed suit, their weapons now enhanced with human-made energy shields and quantum disruptors. They fired in erratic patterns, opening gaps in their defenses to lure the Kryon into traps. Suddenly, the swarm reacted. A massive Kryon ship, over 100 meters wide, launched its devastating attack drones. A wave of jagged crystals that glowed with deadly energy. The human and Zorrak fleets responded in unison, firing a deadly barrage of reconfigured mining lasers, now capable of disintegrating entire ships in a single shot. For a moment, it seemed as though the storm would overwhelm them. But humanity's ingenuity shone through. As the first wave of Kryon drones closed in, General Zara Kingston, commanding the human fleet, ordered the use of asteroid-based projectiles, chunks of rock rigged with explosive charges, were launched into the path of the incoming drones. The explosion that followed was nothing short of spectacular. The asteroid fragments tore through the Kryon ships, causing massive disruption in their formation. It was the breakthrough they needed. "Movin'," Krelthar shouted, his voice booming. With precision and speed, the combined fleet poured everything they had into the oncoming swarm. The battle was fierce and the outcome uncertain. But humanity and the Zorrak fought as one, against an enemy that would have destroyed them both. For the first time, it felt like they were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win. The silence that followed the battle was deafening. The once pristine blackness of space, now littered with the shattered remains of Kryon ships, glowed with the eerie remnants of what had been a brutal war. The combined fleet, human and Zorrak, had held their ground, but the cost was heavy. Krelthar stood at the command center of the stellar bastion, his gaze fixed on the tactical display. Out of the 300,000 Kryon ships, more than 120,000 had been destroyed or rendered inoperative. The remaining drones had retreated, their collective consciousness temporarily disrupted. But the price had been steep. 15 human ships were lost, and 8 Zorrak warships had been critically damaged. "Victory, Doctor," Voss said softly, her voice reverberating with an emotion she rarely showed. "But at what cost?" Krelthar turned to her, his expression unreadable. "The Zorg never back down. We never retreat. But this wasn't just a victory for us. This was your victory." Human engineers and Zorrak soldiers worked side by side, salvaging what remained of the Kryon wreckage. The remains of human ships were patched up by Zorrak technicians, while humans reverse-engineered the Kryon technology that could still be used. "Without you, we would have lost," Krelthar added, his voice softer now, as though the weight of the battle had finally sunken. "Doctor," Voss nodded, her eyes scanning the repairs in progress. "And without your firepower, we would have never made it this far. This alliance, it's not just a necessity anymore, it's the future." As the last of the Kryon ships drifted into the void, the human and Zorrak forces stood united, something no one had ever thought possible. The quiet hum of the stellar bastion was punctuated by the distant echoes of repair teams, working tirelessly to rebuild what had been lost. The Kryon Collective had been repelled, but the battle had left deep scars. The fleet was battered, its numbers diminished, yet the survivors stood tall, united under the banner of an unlikely alliance. The Zorrak, once masters of the galaxy, now fought side by side with the humans they had once sought to crush. "Doctor," Voss stood at the front of the communication bay, her fingers brushing over the console. The moment had come, the final message to the galaxy, a declaration of humanity's place among the stars. She glanced back at Krelthar, who stood at the door, his expression unreadable. He had never fully accepted the alliance, but the battle against the Kryon had changed him. The Zorg now understood what humanity was capable of, its ingenuity, its resolve, its ability to adapt and innovate in ways that defied expectation. "Doctor," Voss took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice strong, clear, and unyielding. "To the galaxy, to any who would threaten us or stand in our way, Earth's time as a passive player is over. We fought to survive, But now, we fight to win. The Kryon have learned that lesson. The Zorrak have learned it, and you will too. Voss leaned closer to the camera, her eyes burning with fierce determination. Mess with us, and the galaxy will learn what fuck you really means. As the transmission cut off, a silence settled over the room. The words echoed not just across the galaxy, but in the hearts of every soldier, human and Zorrak, who had fought to defend their future. The warning was clear. Earth had found its strength, and it would no longer be underestimated. The universe had been put on notice.